Let us enjoy a few more of these haiku-like diamonds of wisdom that have been bequeathed to us by the great Sheikh Abol-Hasan. And I think we will find that in all of these teachings that the core message is that if you wish to know God, you must abandon the identification with an ego. The ego is the obstacle, it's the delusion, it's the cause of all suffering. And we are attached to the ego. Consciousness is addicted to the ego, and the pleasure that the ego gives when it is experiencing what others will perceive as arrogance. It's the ego's penchant for speaking from master's discourse, from believing it as some superiority over others, and believing that it has certain rights to enjoyment and territoriality and power that prevent our rising to the level in which real power and wisdom and superiority can be gained. But that false version of ourself is the enemy that we have unfortunately mostly been seduced by. And the problem in the spiritual process is the lower version of oneself keeps the higher version from being born. And from the lower version, what we are missing is a blind spot. We don't even know we are keeping more wisdom out by thinking we already have it. And it's the lack of humility that is lethal if you are on the quest to really discover the truth of the self. So Abol-Hasan here is talking about Bayazid, his sheikh. Bayazid said, "I am neither a traveler nor a resident. I say, I am a traveler and a resident in my beloved's oneness." So we could say the traveler is the bodhisattva and the Buddha is the resident. Both are going to be present, but the traveler must always be in surrender to the resident. Paths to God can't be counted. There are as many roads to Him as there are humans. I was shown the path of longing and told, this is a heavy load. Not everyone can bear it. How many feel real longing for God? Who really, really know that God is your beloved and the only source of your salvation and your bliss. It's a heavy burden, but it's also the release of all the burdens of the ego. Because once we are connected to the beloved takes those burdens on. I begged for salvation and found it in solitude. I asked for safety and found it in silence. It's these two aspects of solitude and silence that mostly the ego avoids at all costs. It can't even be silent in its own mind. It's always talking to itself. It never knows the bliss of silence. It never knows the truth of what solitude really is, which can happen even in a group. But one has to be in union with the beloved. For 30 years I have been speaking to my Lord only, and people have thought it was them I am addressing. I haven't uttered a single insincere word, for within and without I have only been with my beloved. If the prophet, peace be upon him, were to walk through the door now, he would find the same and nothing else. It's reminiscent of that moment with Anandamayi Ma in meeting Yogananda, saying, Father, but everyone is the Father. Everyone is a manifestation of the Beloved. When one has humbled the ego so that one doesn't exist as a separate being, then none are separate. And the only intercourse, the only conversation is between the Beloved and the lover. Like a snake which sheds its skin, I've torn out of and shed my little self. This is what we all must do. We must shed the ego self. Without that, none of the joys and the true significance of what spiritual realization is can be known. And one is just playing at the shore of the ocean and never entering into its depths. There won't be a need for me to stand ransom for those who come to me, for they shall stand ransom for many. This idea of ransom, it's a Christian idea, really, isn't it? And it's that idea of one's sacrificing the ego as an act of service. Whoever heard or is hearing me, the least that will be done for him is that his trespasses shall not count. This is very interesting. You see, when one speaks from God consciousness, one is delivering a message directly from God. And if you know that, if you realize it, then even if you've just had the contact with God for one moment via an intermediary who is egoless, you will have made such a connection to God that your trespasses are already forgiven. I raised my face to my Lord and said, My beloved, on the day of reckoning, judgment comes, and then all shall pass. But that which is between you and me, that never passes. And so we see here, it's very clear there will be a day of reckoning, a final judgment. We're now very close to it. In his day it was far away. Now we are within literal days of this event, and the world as it is will pass. It's already passing, but we want to already be with the one who never changes, who remains constant and conscious through the change of worlds, and remains able to be the transcendent witness and server in that process of the return of the lost flock of God's children back to the source. And many shepherds are needed, many who have the courage to shed the ego and function as God's helpers.